So, to decorate the rooms, we cover all the walls with what we call flats. And what's a flat? So now what we're going to do, we'll discuss what are they, where will you find your flats, how do you paint them, why do we tape joints, how do you put scenes and figures on them, how do you hang them up, window access to the window, very important, otherwise your room will get beastly hot. We'll talk about stages, gussets, that will become clearer when we get to it, and access to switches and receptacles, and we'll talk about doors and furniture that's built into some rooms. This particular room we're doing the training in does not have any built-in furniture, but many rooms do have a cabinet built into that corner, and it's non-removable, so it will be there. The first thing, if you get new flats, and I believe room 704 is getting new flats, it's important on the back of the new flats, the back side, to paint a big X with a roller. One stripe up, one stripe down. And what that does is keep the flat from warping. When you paint the other side, we always use latex paint. The moisture from the latex paint will cause the flat to badly warp. And over the years, they become difficult to use. When people look at them, they see the badly warping. So a lesson we learned from Portical down in Glenview, when their flats were great, I asked them, how do you do that? And they showed me, and that's it. Flats are 4 foot by 8 foot. There's a 1 by 2 to give it some rigidity. We put gusset plates up in the corner. The gusset plates are a triangular piece. This is smaller than we normally use, but it works for me packing it up. They will be bigger than that. The reason I point out the gusset plates is they affect what goes on in the corners if you're trying to poke something through. Each flat will have a hole, a 1/4 inch hole, drilled in each corner for hanging them. And why each corner? Because then you don't have to worry when you're decorating the flat which end is top. If you should happen to have a flat that doesn't have a hole, come to 204 and we will have it drilled. Okay, the flats are stored down in front of the auditorium. There will be a number above the flats. That's your room number. Make sure you take your own. Take it from me. One time I wasn't paying close attention and I used 10 flats from the wrong pile. So I said to the guy, I'll replace the flats, which I did. Unfortunately, I had 10 brand new flats and I had to give him 10 that were probably 12 years old and looked like it. Very, very embarrassing. So get your right flats. There you can see the X painted on the back side of the flat. When you're painting the flats in the auditorium, it's important to put down a drop cloth. We have rolls of builder's paper, red rosin paper. You put it on the floor. I will show you later on the slide that shows you why. And here again, those are the current gussets, the newer flats, which are bigger. And this flat has not yet had the X put on it. Now, when you put the flats up, the boards, as you can imagine, being a 1 by 2, the boards are not all perfectly straight. So when you put the flats up, you can have them bowed this way, which leaves gap top and bottom, or bowed concave, which leaves a gap someplace in the center. What we do to counteract that is cover them with a 2-inch strip of masking tape. And we have got the masking tape. It will be in your box. And then we paint the masking tape to match the flats, and we'll talk more about that a little later. In fact, we'll talk a little bit about it right now. So, here are finished flats. And if you don't take the joints and paint them, this is what you see. Now, this was a hillbilly type show, and they did an awful lot of work on their flats. But you can see now, if you're in the room and it's dim, what really sticks out at you is the pieces of wood sticking out. It's like the one individual who's out of step in a parade. Here's flats where the joints have been taped. Now, in taping joints, there's one thing that's very important, and that is try to keep your decorations, your designs, away from the edges. Now, I want to point out, this is Kansas farmland, wheat field, for a room that was in support of an Alice in Wonderland type show. Notice how nice it looks. Notice also that the decorations for the wheat do not come right to the edge. If you look at it really closely, you can see the tape, the painted tape. And there's only two colors, the brown and the blue. Notice no clouds go across here. The clouds are separate. So what they did is make it easy for them to tape and paint the joints. Now down here was the Green Acres type show, and so they had three colors. And that's not the end of the world. You can do it. But they had to have black, green, and the gray for the sky. So here you can see them painting the colors. And over here you can see where they painted the tape, and they hadn't finished the bottom just yet. Now, the colors. When you use the Street Scenes paint and you paint your flats, then you need paint to paint the tape. Bring some jars, jelly jars or something to put the paint in and take it home with you. Don't put it in a bottle and mark it. Do not use reserved for room 703. It isn't going to work. It will be used or it will be lost. Maybe even chucked. So take your paint home with you and bring it in when you come in to set up. This is what you do when the room is being set up. So the room here is being set up, the flats are up, the ceiling is not yet up.
So you do the tape in the rooms? So you do the paint and the tape in the rooms once you're set up?
You do the taping in the room. You should try and get the flats painted down in front of the auditorium. It's a lot easier.
Well, I understand that. You paint them down there, but then when you put them up, you tape them in the room, and then you do the final paint in the room.
Yes, in the room, yeah. Well, one other thing I forgot to say, I pointed out the flats on the floor with the paper underneath them. Now, what you want to do is paint them with a long handled roller. You can get down on the floor and paint with that roller, and it works fine. But trust me, if you have a handle on it and you stand up and do it, you will do it in, at most, 1/3 the same amount of time. So paint them with a long handle roller. And there should be roller handles with the paint rollers. Some more elaborate rooms. Give you an idea of the size. Here's with the one of the rooms crew's children there. Now that looks really impressive, and it looks really difficult. And it is impressive, it's not difficult. I'm going to show you how to do it. So the first thing you do is you decide what it is you want to do, and coloring books are great. So you, with a piece of acetate, transparency paper, you make a copy of it in any printer, and you project it up on the flat. You can make it as big or as little as you want by moving the cart, and then somebody with a pencil traces it out. It does not have to be precise. Now, we'll let that go for that much of it. And then the artist would write on it green, yellow, white, black, red, and then the people come in and paint it. Now, scenery is an illusion. It doesn't have to be a piece of art. Incidentally, you may find someone would come up to you, it happened to me, who walked in the room and said, "Oh, I love doing this stuff." Person with an art degree who wasn't working in art. And man, when you do that, you latch onto them. And this gal painted all our flats, not all our flats, but painted the elaborate backgrounds, and we had some really elaborate backgrounds. but we had a gal who was a professional in that sense. Now, Fred Flintstone, obviously you can take that off of any coloring book, but it's too low. Now if you look over here, I'm a normal sized person. I'm a normal sized person. I'm sitting in a normal height chair. Look how much of the wall I cover. So you don't need to decorate down to the floor, because nobody's going to see it. Keep your decorations up higher. This other one is something I always thought was really clever. I mentioned at the start that people do clever things to try to record them. This was supposed to be a dressing room for some women who were singers, and they were getting ready to put on a show, and they were putting their makeup on. So I thought that was pretty neat. The way they did it, 4 white spotlights, and these are white paper plates. Isn't that neat? Now, I had talked about putting paper on the floor when you paint the flats, and here's why. It didn't happen when they painted these flats, and you can see all the paint going down there. It turned out one of the people who used to work with us, Ralph Kaiser, saw this going on. And what they did is they laid all their flats down, nothing under them, and then they had a kid, which is okay, had a kid painting them with a roller, and he went right over all the joints. And as he went right over all the joints, the paint ran through. Now, here's an actual picture. This is not posed. I came by, and the janitor was using a putty knife to scrape the paint off. It is my belief that some student sold an ad that amounted to paying the janitors or scrape paint off the floor. And that's a waste of money, and it's not fair to the kid who sold the ads. And I'd say, well, the janitor's being paid anyhow. Yeah, he is. But while he's doing this, he's not doing something else that should be done in the school. So anyhow, protect the floor. Other thing that's wrong with here, the rollers weren't cleaned up or returned to the paint room. How can anybody else use them if they're over here behind the flats? Now, if they're your rollers, I guess that's okay. But I would prefer you take them home so other people don't start doing it. The other thing that was a mistake is they used a plastic drop cloth. Plastic drop cloths are bad news because the paint sits on them and doesn't dry. So as you walk around, it doesn't soak in. As you walk around, you get them on your feet, and then you leave footprints all over the auditorium down there. Seen it more than one time. And then we pay a janitor to scrape the paint off by hand.